Do you think TPP can survive without the United States?
Well, I think it was designed to include the United States, of course, and many of the rules in the agreement reflect issues that the United States put on the table and help promote. But having said that, whether the U.S. pursues in its negotiations with Mexico and Canada the renegotiation of NAFTA or a bilateral with Japan or others, you may find elements of TPP making its way into those agreements as well.
Did you regret, or do you regret now, that China was not being invited?
Well, as we always said, TPP is not something that you're invited to. It's something
you always say that, but
something
China
that
was
you,
never that well enthusiastically welcomed.
It's something you aspire to. The goal is to set high standards and to encourage countries to raise their game.
But do you think there were any chance at the time when you were still in the office that TPP could have a faster track of reaching an agreement and being implemented so that it would not see its fate today?
Well, I think there are always, when you look back, I think there are always things that we wish we could have done differently to make it get done sooner. Well, I think there were issues in Congress about getting trade promotion authority passed, certain delays there. I think the negotiations with Japan, which were absolutely critical in terms of the market access piece, took a great deal of time to get done. But it's a very complicated agreement. It's comprehensive. Yes. And as we know, these trade agreements always take some time. It was about 5 years of intensive negotiations in the making. Some agreements have taken much longer than that. So it's easy in retrospect to try and find things we wish we could have done differently if we had had control over all of those elements. But at the end of the day, again, I think that the work that's been done, now that it's out there in public, we're going to find other countries picking up bits and pieces of it, incorporating it into their own agreements. And even we may find some or all of the TPP 11 moving forward with it and encouraging others to join as well.
The Obama administration has never pointed to China and slashed the label currency manipulator. Do you think it would be smart, politically and also potentially, for the current administration, the Republican administration, to do so?
Well, each administration can define the criteria. They're not written in law. And we were very open in our reports
about... What were the criteria you were emphasizing on when you were the trade rep?
Well, there were clear criteria that the Treasury Department put out. Yes. About running a persistent current account surplus, about persistent one-sided intervention, and about the bilateral trade deficit. And some countries met one or two of the criteria. And the Treasury Department would go through each country and assess where it was against those criteria. We're going to have to see what the new administration does in this regard.
Do you think that three-point criteria is a well-designed plan?
Well, I think Secretary Liu and the Obama administration defined the criteria in that way. I think it made sense, but we'll see what the new administration does, and it's really up to their discretion to determine what to do. I think the underlying issue, though, I think what you saw during the most recent election in the U.S. is a lot of anger and resentment among the American people, and this feeling that the international trading system wasn't working fairly, and that the U.S., which has a very open economy, our average applied tariff is 1.5%, 70% of what we import from the world comes in duty-free. We don't use regulations as a disguised barrier to trade, but we face major obstacles, including in China. And there's a sense that, though, there wasn't a sense of reciprocity or a sense of fairness. And that, I think, is something that candidate Trump and the Trump administration is very much reacting to and is developing policies in response to.
Ambassador Froman, reciprocity is the key word that's being used by American politicians a lot these days toward China. But there are issues related to reciprocity when somebody is trying to use that standard. That is, there are different development stages of economies. And also, there are different obligations according to international platforms, such as WTO, to different kinds of economies at different stages and different times. So reciprocity should be encouraged, as we all know, but at the same time, there are different factors influencing the so-called reciprocity.
I don't think there's any question but that China, while it has a long way to go in development in certain ways, is a very advanced economy in other respects and globally competitive. And here at the Boao Forum, we're talking about many of these areas where China is a global leader in various industrial processes, the fourth industrial revolution, technology. You know, it's no longer a
per capita. It is much smaller an economy.
I understand the statistics.
It is still a developing
I think on a purchasing power parity basis, it does quite well, and it's the second largest economy in the world.
Yes.
I think the key thing is China is, in many respects, the largest trading economy in the world, and it needs to take responsibilities commensurate with its role in the global economy.
Taking responsibility, for example, is one of the goals that China has, both the protector and also reformer of the international system. Do you think, Ambassador Froman, our existing trading system can continue to function if we focus only on bilateral relations?
Well, I saw President Xi's comments in Davos about China playing this role, as you say, the defender and reformer of the global, existing international system. But to be a leader, it takes more than just declaring yourself one. It takes actions, both domestically and internationally. For 70 years, the US, the European Union, others have played a significant role in helping to develop and support a global trading system that China has benefited enormously from.
So it's time for you to retire?
No, but it's time for China to step up and play a greater role.
What is the role of the United States now?
Well, the United States, being the largest economy in the world, still has a role to play. But I think what the American people have articulated is we want other countries to play fair as well. And that means domestically, taking actions that open China's economy, create a level playing field for participation. Some of the actions being talked about forced localization or technology transfer or indigenous innovation, those are quite a bit at odds with playing a leadership role for an open and rules-based system.
Talking about subsidy, there are things that the United States is doing that right now does not necessarily go with your principle, it seems, Ambassador Froman. For example, about the steel industry, which is quite a factor that is already in the past of the U.S. economy, but you're putting huge amount of subsidies and also exercise huge amount of taxes against the foreign imports about that.
There are no subsidies of our steel industry.
And also trying to let your economies and companies only create jobs back at home, move the factories from overseas into inland. That is not the way to go if we're talking about free trade.
So let's be clear about what's a fact and what's not. There are no subsidies of our steel industry. There are anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases against other countries who illegally subsidize their steel production or who dump their steel in our markets.
We all understand.
Let me finish. And those anti-dumping and countervailing duties have been upheld by the WTO as well. China has 400,000 metric tons of excess capacity in steel. It has distorted the global steel production. We have produced only 80,000 tons of steel in total in China.
Because that you're not in that stage anymore. You have long gone the days of the prosperity of the steel industry, Mr. Ambassador. I'm sure you know
and
this
we have
very
and we
well.
have some very
China,
efficient.
as we said earlier, we have a very different development stage. This is one of the signs of that development stage.
I think we're very happy to compete on a level playing field and have our efficient steel mills stand up and compete against other mills that are based on non-subsidized market forces.
In order to support one job in the steel industry, your government is actually subsidizing a lot of cash for just one job of that steel industry to make it survive.
Once again, there's no subsidy.
We're talking about market rules. This is something we're talking about.
Look, I'm afraid you're not accurate. There's no subsidy. There are anti-dumping and countervailing duties imposed on illegally subsidized steel from China and other countries.
There are industries in your country that do not necessarily agree with what your government is doing, which is trying to put a lot of emphasis.
That's the beauty of democracy, is we can have different perspectives.
Protection of the steel industry. Let's move on to another topic.
But I just want to say, the issue of excess capacity, this is another area where...
Talking about excess capacity,
where China
is now decapacity right now. It is doing its structural reform. And China, as the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said it very clearly during his annual press conference, we are not begging others to bring their jobs into our place, but rather we are trying to solve the problem of our own with our own efforts. And the United States, do you think there is something that the United States should also look at itself, reflect a little bit?
I think it's very positive that the Chinese leadership has agreed and identified excess capacity as a problem for China. But as they close down certain steel mills, they are opening up additional capacity. And the net capacity has not declined. And you can say the same thing in aluminum, in solar panels, and several other products. That's having a global distortive effect. And that's something that's going to have to be dealt with, or you're going to see the kind of reaction that you saw in the American political system also develop in other countries against China.
This is one of the very clear signs that one economy is not looking at itself to correct its own mistakes, but rather looking all the others as the cause of the very problem they have. For example, the United States, according to you, Mr. Ambassador, I have to say.
Just to your point, earlier you said we've already restructured much of our steel industry, and you're right. We've gone through several painful restructurings. We're down to 80,000.
Not now. What about the problem now you're having? We're not talking about history, sir.
We're now down to 80,000 metric tons. If China would like to go through the same restructuring process and get rid of 400,000 metric tons of excess capacity, that's beyond all of the capacity that they need for their own use, then that would be a very positive
So you know, Mr. Ambassador, I'm talking about the challenges today you're facing right now. Are you doing anything about your challenge today rather than reflect upon the achievements that you have done over the decades?
Absolutely.
Because everybody applauded the United States for establishing or helping to establish the international system after the Second World War. And yet they do a comparison of the United States then and the US today in terms of encouraging the positive changes of the world, not just your country yourself.
Yeah, we have one of the most dynamic economies, which means industries close down and new industries get developed, and we allow market forces to work in that regard. And sometimes it's very painful for communities that are facing changes in technology or globalization and are seeing the impact on wages and jobs. And you saw that, the reaction in our political system. But that's an indication, in fact, that we let market forces work, not that we prevent them from working, and that's the difference.
We could always see both sides of everything. It really depends on which one you really want to emphasize, sir. But Chinese businesses are also quite concerned that ZTE was just fined more than $1 billion US. That's a huge amount of money. Of course, ZTE still wants to be in the US market. But having said that, how would you, as someone who used to work in the administration, address these concerns coming from Chinese businesses?
I think if they have specific concerns, they should raise them. But we have our tariffs are low, our regulations are transparent, and our investment environment is quite open.
So you're saying we have no problem?
Well, I think we should hear.
Are with you.
I think we should hear what the issues are, because I think we start from a very different basis. Just as you say China starts from a different development perspective, it certainly starts from a different perspective in terms of market openness.
Okay, so you agree with me about the different development stages at this
No.
point, at least. In the statements coming from both sides, 4 words are being used: non-conflict, non-confrontation, mutual respect, win-win. Are you surprised?
Well, I think that those are important Chinese formulations.
It's being used in the statements also said by Secretary Tillerson during his time facing the press.
Yeah, I think it's the underlying issues, not the words, that in my view are important. Getting to the underlying concerns in the relationship and addressing them.
You agree with those 4 words?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily use those 4 words. I think what's important is that we see progress on the outstanding issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What a pleasure.
Thank you
Thank you so much.